Hello and welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and coming up in today's newscast, a pending budget with a high chance of actually passing finally put on the table after 3.5 years. Meanwhile, Emiratis, Israelis, and Bahrainis heading to the States on a mission to promote peace and cooperation. And finally, stay tuned for another day of big events in Tokyo. ILTV's Channa Rifkin and General Manager of the Israeli Olympic baseball team, Peter Kurtz, joining us with the details. Israeli lawmakers on Tuesday again advancing a rabbinical court reform bill in its second Knesset reading. This after Knesset Speaker Miki Levy accidentally killed the bill in an earlier attempt to pass it. The bill is set to expand the panel that appoints rabbinical judges with an emphasis on including more female and government representatives. But that's not all that's advancing overnight. The Bennett-Lapid government finally providing long-awaited budget proposals with sweeping reforms across the board. For over an unprecedented 3.5 years, Israel's been without an official national budget. The absence felt throughout nearly every part of the country, but the delay may be finally coming to an end with the advancement of the latest Arrangements Law, a bill that outlines policy and structural reforms alongside a second, drier bill calculating projected incomes and expenditures, together the two forming the national budget. Aside from increasing the 2022 defense budget to some $17.8 billion, though, this year's Arrangements Law, arguably one of the most complicated and longest ever drafted, also including a number of major and controversial reforms. First, the dissolving of the rabbinate's monopoly on kosher certifications and enforcement, the current system being rife with petty corruption and high consumer costs. Under the new system, independent groups under the rabbinate supervision would provide competitively rated certification services on a more local and personalized level. Second, agricultural reform that would gradually adopt many European produce standards. It would also open Israeli markets to international competition and streamline the bureaucracy on both imports and exports within the agricultural sector. This as large tax breaks and other incentives will be provided to encourage investment in local Israeli farming. Likewise, Israel's deliberately different and difficult import standards will be reformatted to comply more closely with American and European guidelines, again to streamline and encourage more international trade while driving costs to Israeli consumers way down. Many Israeli lobby groups, however, are terrified that Israeli businesses will be eliminated, arguing that these reforms will remove important protections and economic safeguards. In other news, Lebanon has a new prime minister designate. President Michel Aoun announcing on Monday that Najib Mikati will be the new leader for the struggling country for the third time. Lebanon currently suffering from the worst crisis it's ever seen, but Mikati, who was the prime minister of Lebanon back in 2005 and again from 2011 to 2014, knows a little bit about what he's getting into. So how will the new old president fare with these problems? What kind of opposition could he expect, and where does Israel fall in regards to the new post? Well, joining us to discuss these issues is ILTV reporter Asaf Nissan. Asaf, thank you so much for being with us. Now, who is the new old president of Lebanon, or prime minister of Lebanon, I should say exactly, and how come he was chosen now as the new official prime minister of Lebanon?
Well, first of all, Aaron, great to be here as always. The new prime minister of Lebanon, Najib Mikati, is actually the president who's just been announced for the third time in his entire life to be the prime minister of Lebanon. This is, of course, after being elected back in 2005 and 2011 to 2014. He's considered one of the richest men in Lebanon, and also public opinion does swift a little bit on him because he's considered one of the people who did bring the country into the current crisis. Reason, though, he was elected now is the fact that that the other elect that tried yet again to form a government, Saad Hariri, failed and finally decided to throw in the towel and quit the attempts of trying to form a new government.
Well, so how does Mikati, how is he planning to fix the current crisis plaguing the country? And how much support does he really have, especially given, as you said, his background of, being this really rich person with, a controversial background, I should say, in Lebanon?
So Mikati is planning to fix the current crisis plaguing the country by appealing to the European countries and the IMF, who are also calling for him to do certain reforms in the country. But unfortunately, this is not going to be as easy as promised, because we are talking about a president who was supported by the Islamic faction of Hezbollah, and most of the Islamic factions and the Sunnis and the Shiites who wanted him in power. And this is a prime minister who's also been known in the past to be in good terms with Syria, thus making it a potential ally for Iran. So we're not expecting to see the easiest fix in the world. And in addition, we're also seeing that in the coalition itself and in the opposition, basically in parliament, we're going to see a lot of strife coming in from the Maronite and the Christian parties, which is actually led right now under the son-in-law of the current president, Michel Aoun. And he, of course, is saying that he's not willing to let the faction go and support a Sunni or Shiite, any pretty much Islamic president that is not going to support their needs.
All right, so you talked a little bit about his supporters and his opposition a little bit here. Could this president, could this be the prime minister, could this be the next leader of Lebanon that, despite these political opponents, unite Lebanon and get the country back on track?
I would say it's not impossible, but we are going to see a lot of problems and a lot of fights in between, especially due to the fact that he is representing one half of the map when you don't have the other minorities represented properly. And then again, how can you represent the whole country if you don't care about the other minorities? And as I stated in the past, these are factions that are literally tearing Lebanon apart, because we're not talking about like little political parties. We're talking about complete publics that are being either put on the side or completely ignored due to the fact that they're not Islamic.
All right, so we know, of course, also that Mikati is backed by Hezbollah. He's known to be affiliated with the Syrian regime, as you've touched on a little bit. How should Israel be viewing this new appointment?
Israel should view this new appointment as pretty much every other president, every other prime minister that the country had. We're seeing a country that is divided still is in a problem that can't find itself, which means it's either going to go with Iran, which of course Israel is worried about, and that's where probably the direction will go right now. But on the other hand, if Mikati will decide to go with the Europeans, maybe this will open a new window to diplomacy. We cannot be sure of it yet. This is too soon to tell, but only time will tell, of course.
All right, well, of course, we wish the best for the people of Lebanon who are struggling with this situation, and we'll see what happens in the future. Thank you so much, Asaf.
Thank you so much.
Now, speaking of regional diplomacy, the Abraham Accords between Israel, the UAE, and Bahrain is ushering in a new era of friendship and peace in the Middle East. And Shaka, which means partnership, is an organization founded by young Israeli and Gulf leaders in order to strengthen the trust and collaboration between our societies. Joining me with more on their organization and their recent mission to the States, CEO of Shaka USA, Omar Al-Busaidi, and Director of Shaka's Communications and Global Affairs, Major Dan Pfefferman. Thank you so much for being here to discuss this recent tour of the States. Omar, I'd like to start with you. What is the goal in your eyes of this trip, and what are the things that you hope to achieve with Shaka through these talks?
What we want to achieve from this is basically we want to promote a new model of peace through this tour. The model of peace between Israel and the countries of the Abraham Accords, including UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan. And we also have a special guest from Saudi Arabia. So we have a Saudi national joining us who want to promote this model of peace and also to change the narrative here in the US amongst the media, government and elected officials, faith communities, civic leaders, and academics, because the current narrative of the Middle East is definitely outdated and out of touch with what's happening on the ground. We're coming here as this Emirati-Israeli delegation with the Saudi to offer a different point of view.
So what are maybe some of the common misconceptions or the most common questions and concerns that you're getting on this speaking tour?
So some of the misconceptions is basically that it is not representative of the real feelings in the region, which is completely not true. You can see that when the beginning of the Abraham Accords, when it was signed, the number of Israelis that traveled to the UAE was just outstanding. It was overwhelming for a lot of people. And also that this relationship is deep, it's authentic. You can also see that on social media. We've been seeing a groundswell of real normalization taking place, holiday blessings, greeting, congratulations in the UAE, but also beyond. And you see that many started to show interest and support for Israel, including people in Saudi Arabia, in Iran, and all over. So people want to get past these conflicts and they want to work together.
So Omar, first of all, thank you so much. Dan, I want to bring you in to the conversation. Same question. What are some of the misconceptions or some of the things that are most asked to be clarified?
Sure. I mean, one of the major things that we get, and we're going to continue to get as we go on this next leg of the speaking tour, a lot of people think that it's all about the Iran threat or all about the UAE wanting to acquire F-35s or some kind of publicity stunt for President Trump or Prime Minister Netanyahu, who were in power at the time, and that it's not real, it's not deep, it's not genuine. Certainly not, not on the part of our friends in the Arab Gulf. And what we're trying to point out here and show people by the very fact that we are close friends, and these are friendships that were made after the Abraham Accords were signed, is that this is very real, it's very genuine. And not only is it gonna, this is not a publicity stunt. Not only do we look to positively affect the lives of millions of Israelis, Emiratis, Bahrainis, soon Moroccans now as Israelis can start traveling there. But hopefully the rest of the region will get on board and realize that by cooperating together, we don't have to be in conflict. We can cooperate together and we can improve the entire region by working together, by Shaka, by partnership, and not by competing or being in conflict with each other.
All right. So Omar, do you feel, and we talked a little bit about the misconceptions about the feelings on the ground. So do you feel, even after almost a year of these Abraham Accords being in force and all of these government change-ups, power dynamic change-ups, frozen deals, et cetera, do you feel that even still the partnership, the Abraham Accords, are as strong as ever, if not stronger?
Absolutely. And one of the reasons we're doing this tour is to reflect upon exactly that point. Despite the conflicts in the region, despite the negative narrative that you get from some media outlets, we're here to show that regardless of what's happening around, the people on the ground are truly connecting. Till today, we still have events. We're celebrating the anniversary of the Abraham Accords very soon. We have all these virtual sessions that are happening between people, and we're grateful to outlets just like yourselves who highlight and cover this. And we're here in the U.S. We have so many organizations and institutions that are waiting to meet with us to hear about this. We have a very jam-packed schedule from New York and Boston and Atlanta, thanks to Dan, of course. And we're just excited to come here and to show people what actually is happening on the ground. And since the Abraham Accords as well, just before the anniversary, we saw quite a number of visits from several ministers from the UAE to Israel, including Her Excellency Maryam Al-Maheri. And also you saw there was different memorandums signed between different think tanks between Israel and the UAE. The show is still going on.
So Dan, I'm going to come back to you. What are the next steps? What are the things that need to happen next to ensure that this peace, that this friendship growing in a grassroots way amongst the peoples of the Gulf and Israel preserves?
Sure. And I'll just add to your previous question, if I may. Please. I mean, you saw that the new government came in Israel, and the very first foreign visit that Foreign Minister Lapid did was to go to Abu Dhabi and Dubai and to meet with the leaders and to sign more agreements to show that this is a priority also for this government. So this is something that transcends governments. It survived and continued going even with the conflict that we had here in Israel, and shows no sign of slowing down. The major impediment so far, honestly, is really the COVID travel restrictions that, and even with COVID, we had over 200,000 Israelis travel to the UAE. We hope to be able to open the gates of travel soon to Emiratis and Bahrainis who are really waiting to come here and have so much curiosity and interest. I think those are the two the really big main impediment, and because so much online connection has happened, so much one-way travel has happened, and as soon as we can open the gates, you're going to have the travel in this direction. I have to say, the Emiratis and the Bahrainis and others who have promoted normalization on social media, especially, have gotten a lot of flack from the Arab world, and they stood brave. But slowly and surely, I think they're changing hearts and minds. Omar can be a testament to that. And we in Shaka, we're trying to do everything we can to push that people-to-people the base of this peace, so it doesn't just remain a cold peace between governments. And in that way, when it becomes a people-to-people peace, when there's cultural connections and social connections and business connections, it can certainly weather any type of conflicts or changes of government or policy disagreements, which are certainly going to come up between any two countries.
All right. Well, I think it's incredible work that you guys are doing. I'm so proud to have you here to speak with us about it. Dan, Omar, thank you so much for being with us again.
Thank you.
Moving on, at least 50 faculty members at the City University New York CUNY colleges are resigning following the faculty union's adoption of a statement critical of Israel. And this coming in the wake of a major surge in anti-Semitism in New York City over the last several months, particularly amid the latest conflict in Gaza between Israel and Hamas. With us to discuss is Chen Mazig, activist, writer, and fellow at the Tel Aviv University. Chen, thank you so much for joining us. Now, why the mass resignation now? Has the atmosphere changed? Because anti-Zionist expressions of anti-Semitism in the States are not exactly new.
Right, and we haven't seen yet a university faculty union that is taking a resolution to boycott or divest from Israel in the size that we have seen now in CUNY. We know that CUNY has been anti-Semitic for years. I mean, the anti-Semitism in these campuses, in the student union, has been something that was condemned by Jewish leaders and actually non-Jewish leaders alike. But to see a faculty union taking a resolution like this one from the professors that have resigned was something that they haven't seen before.
All right, so how bad is the situation, especially at CUNY? Because you mentioned that anti-Semitism has been an issue there for a while. Right,
and I mean, it's the most telling thing is that CUNY had passed two resolutions last month, one about China and one about Israel. The resolution about China was defending the Chinese government. It was a resolution that basically protected the Chinese government against boycott. And at the same time, they passed a resolution about Israel that is calling to boycott Israel, and then the one that we see now. I think that, and I hear that a lot, that people are saying, please don't do this whataboutism and don't talk about China. It's another tactic to make sure that nothing is put into perspectives. But I think we need to put it into perspective, because it's not to say that because China is committing far worse human rights violation, we should ignore the difficulties and the challenges that Israel is dealing with. But it just gives you a perspective and understanding that this is not about human rights violation. If it was, they would have passed resolution about how China is committing a genocide against over 1 million Muslims that are being in concentration camps in China. So it's not about human rights rather than about targeting a specific country. And it happened to be the only Jewish state.
All right, Chen Mazig, thank you so much for joining us again. And now it's time for our daily update on the 2020-2021 Summer Olympic Games, where we cover the latest surrounding Israel's Olympic team in Tokyo, Japan. And of course, back to discuss is ILTV's Channa Rifkin. Channa, we have a number of upsets and surprises overnight, no?
Yes, and actually we have some big archery news. Itai Shani, Israel's first ever Olympic archer, came up for an unexpected win, a total underdog success. He made the last 16 of the men's individual competition, and this was extremely surprising because he ranked only 60 out of 64 in the initial rankings.
That's amazing. All right, so we'll have to follow Shani very closely. Archery is one of the amazing things that I wish I could do and was always terrible with at camp.
Me too.
But coming in, we've had some other incredible news in some other rounds. I understand Israel's rising star judoka Sagi Muki is out.
Yes, Muki is out, and Israel is not having luck this time around with judo, unfortunately. Lee Kochman also did well in his first match with his Czech opponent in the 90-kilogram weight class, but then ultimately was knocked out in his next fight up against Georgia. But speaking of Sagi Muki, his now close friend Said Moulai won silver on behalf of Mongolia after defecting from Iran.
Yeah, I heard. And Muki actually shared a ton of love for Moulai, calling him an inspiration and saying that he deserves this win and more, which he does. So congratulations, Said Moulai, especially after having to leave Iran because he wanted to compete against Israel. I actually kind of only wish that more athletes followed his example instead of dropping out and endangering their own futures in the sport.
Exactly. And there are long-term consequences. Just yesterday, the International Olympic Committee clarified that they will not accept any discrimination, and they want to keep sports free from politics. Take a look.
Obviously, the IOC has been very clear that non-discrimination, autonomy, all of these principles that are in the Olympic Charter are things that we will not flinch from, and we will adopt a strict position on all of those.
All right, well, it's good to see that the IOC is working to keep the spirit of the Games. Channa, thank you so much for your update, but actually stay with us because we have now another inspiring journey to the Olympics in Tokyo coming from Israel's incredible baseball team. And for more, we're joined by special guest Peter Kurtz, general manager of the Israeli Olympic baseball team. He's here on the line, on the phone with us. Peter, thank you so much for joining us. Now, can you tell us a little bit about the process for getting qualified for this year's Olympics?
First of all, thank you for having me. Nice to be here. We're here in Tokyo. We traveled a long road for the qualifiers. We've already been qualified for about almost 20 months. The qualifiers were in 2019 when we went through 4 different tournaments in 4 different European countries over a period of 10 weeks. 3 of them we had to win and we won them. 1 we had to rank in the top 5. We came in 4th place. Until in September of 2019, we played in Italy a tournament that was the European Olympic qualifier, and we qualified.
Now, what will it take for you to bring home a medal?
It will take to play well without mistakes, to really be, we're ranked, the world rankings of Israel is number 24. And the other 5 teams, Japan is ranked number 1, Korea is ranked number 3, the United States is ranked number 4, Mexico is ranked number 5, and the Dominican Republic is number 7, and we're number 24. So we really have to play way beyond what our capabilities are. We have to play well. We have to get really, really good pitching, excellent defense, and if we do that, and with a little help from God perhaps on the side there, I think we can beat some of the teams here, and that's what we're looking for. We didn't come here to play cards or tiddlywinks, but we came here to compete, and we came here to get a medal.
Now, what has your team's experience been at the Olympics so far? What has the team been doing? What's the all-around atmosphere there?
We've been here for about a week already. We actually 2 weeks before that, from about the 7th of July, we came together in the United States in the Northeast U.S. We had a mini camp for about 2 weeks. We had 9 exhibition games where we traveled throughout the Northeast of the United States, playing in front of primarily Jewish audiences, places like Brooklyn, Connecticut, Bethesda, Maryland, Aberdeen, Maryland, Lancaster, Pennsylvania. But that was a real good tour for us because it really brought the guys together. And the guys had been together 4 years ago and also earlier this year in Arizona. But it really brought everybody together, traveling together on the same bus and being in hotels together. A week ago we came here. We came the day before the opening ceremony. To march in the opening ceremony was extremely inspiring. Just to march as part of the Israeli delegation, to walk into the Olympic Stadium, even though it was empty, or mostly empty, it was just an incredible thing to be part of, to be walking in there with the Israeli delegation. Since then, we've had 5 days of practices. Today was our last practice day. The guys are ready. The guys are all injury-free. They're psyched. We're just doing last-minute repairs on their uniforms and stuff tonight, getting a good night's sleep. And tomorrow at 7 p.m. Japan time, 1 p.m. Israel time, tomorrow we play Korea.
All right. Thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you, Peter. Best of luck.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. And keep watching us. Keep watching us at 1 p.m. Thursday and Friday. Thank you.
All right, now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight's lows are in the 20s, ranging from 20 to 26 degrees Celsius. Then tomorrow's hottest temperatures are expected to be in the 30s, ranging from 30 to 39 degrees Celsius. Meteorologists predicting clear and sunny skies for the most part, but with some partly cloudy skies in Katzrin and Beersheba. All right, that is it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.25 shekels to the American dollar and 2.59 shekels to the Canadian dollar. Finally, for the latest updates and news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as to our newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Aaron Porras. Be well. Thank you so much for watching.